What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Solvice. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you're all doing well out there. Yesterday was the release of the Flu Game 12s, and it was a pretty crazy release. It really looks like the energy for Jordans is back. Let me know down in the comments if any of you were able to cop a pair. Thankfully, I was able to get mine, so we'll have a review for those coming very soon. But make sure that you like this video, but also subscribe and hit the notification bell so when that review goes live, you'll be notified. But let's just go ahead and dive right in. Today, we are taking a look at the Air Jordan 1 85 High OG in the Bred colorway. Now these really don't need an intro, but I'm going to give you one anyway. These, along with the black toe Jordan 1s, are really the ones that started it all. That photo that's been going around quite a bit because of the release of the black toe Reimagines, where you see that picture of the black toes kind of draped over Jordan's shoulder. Well, tied to those shoes on the other side of his shoulder is these right here. And of course there are photos of the Breds on the front side of his shoulder as well. But those two really are the sneakers that started it all. They're the ones that started the craze for the Air Jordan line. Not only is this probably my favorite colorway of the Air Jordan 1, but this is arguably one of the best sneakers of all time. It's just a classic that has really stood the test of time. It's still wearable, it's super versatile, and it's just that shoe that, you know, every single time it comes out, you're gonna have people who are really gonna go crazy for that release. And speaking of releases, the release of this particular pair definitely came with its own bit of controversy. A lot of people were upset about how limited these were. The estimations was anywhere from about 10,000 to 23,000 pairs, and either way you want to come down on that estimation, that's definitely not a lot of pairs for a shoe that a lot of people are obviously going to want to go for. I personally think that this was a good shoe for Jordan Brand to do as a limited release, because they absolutely had to do something to kind of inject some energy back into the lifeblood of the Air Jordan 1, and I think this was a good shoe to do that on. And I'm saying that as somebody who drove an hour and a half to LA, waited in line at Bait LA for an hour and a half in the rain, and then had to drive back home 2.5 hours because of traffic, and ended up taking an L and had to pay resale for them. So I definitely was one of the people who were a little bit sour about how limited they were, but at the end of the day, I understand why the decision was made, and I think it was pretty effective. All right, now let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Air Jordan 1 85 Bred. So first up, let's talk about the packaging. These come in a standard black and red Nike box, just like every original pair of Air Jordan 1s did. So I'm glad they went with this box and they didn't try to do some special original box with this release. This was the right way to go. Now, taking a look at the shoe itself, it is pretty incredible how different these are than the Air Jordan 1 High OGs that we're used to. As far as the shape goes, the materials, really everything about this shoe has been redone, and it's pretty impressive the product that they ended up with. On the upper here, they've used a very high quality, very thick cut, full grain leather. This leather is going to be very durable, and I think it's going to look awesome as it starts to break in. The leather on these is even better than the leather that they used on the past releases of 85s. I'm going to try and do a video for you guys where I compare a few different types of Air Jordans just to kind of give you an idea of the difference. But the leather on these, I think, is even better than those. It really reminds me of the leather that I have on some Red Wing boots that I have. It just seems like a very high quality leather, and I got to tell you, I'm excited to wear these over and over again and see how well that breaks in. Now, they did use some synthetic leather on these, on this oversized swoosh, that OG style swoosh. On the old ones, they used synthetic leather as well, so that's the reason why they went with the synthetic leather there too. Now, while you do have a nylon tongue on these, just like every other Air Jordan 1, the nylon is definitely padded quite a bit more than on the other pairs, and even the Nike AirTag up at the top looks more old school. It doesn't look quite as digital. And speaking of padding, the ankle collar itself is also quite a bit more padded than on the High OG and even the other 85 pairs that I have as well. I have my pair laced up with the black laces, but you do get a spare pair of red laces if you'd like to go with those instead. They even put Chinese characters on the underside of the insole, which they had on the original pairs as well. I think on the original pairs, they were for the factory that it came from, but on these, this roughly translates to excellent quality, and I think that it's just crazy that they went even to that length to make sure that these were as close to the original as they could. But real quick, while we're taking a look at the insole on these, I always think it's funny, like the different details that Jordan Brand decides to keep and leave out. So this is my insole from the 85 reverse Breds, and you have this size tag that when this shoe came out, we were told this is the way that size tags originally were on the shoes. So I think if that's the case, it's kind of interesting that we didn't get that same size tag on this one too. Now they didn't stop at the materials as far as revamping this shoe. They really paid attention to the shape as well. The shape on these is way better than the Air Jordan 1 High OGs that we're used to. I'd say even better than the 85s that we've seen release already. They absolutely nailed the toe box on these. I've always had a complaint about the 85s that we've got so far because the tips seem kind of squared off in some weird way. It's kind of hard to capture, but some angles you can really see that it's got this weird squared off look. The toe on these, nice and sleek and round, and the closest I've ever seen to pictures that I've seen of some 85s from, you know, the original releases. Moving down to the midsole, thankfully we have a white midsole on these. I'm so glad they didn't try to do a sail midsole on this pair, and they've even revamped the texturing that's on the midsole here. If you look at your High OGs, the pattern looks very like digitized. It's very, very uniform. On these, it's a lot more abstract, and it's similar to the other 85s that I have, but even those, you could tell it was a little bit more digitally produced, I guess. This looks a lot more organic. And the same can be said about the outsole as well. You have the same texture in the middle here, where that Nike logo is, and kind of like in that little horseshoe shape there on the heel. And it looks even more defined and more organic than what we've seen on the other 85s. They really looked at every single detail of this shoe just to make sure that they could get it as close to a 1985 pair as possible. And that's hard to do because there are multiple factories that were making these at the time. So it kind of just depends on which shoe you're comparing these to. But overall, I am extremely impressed with how these came out. Sizing on Air Jordan 1s is a little bit interesting. So on my High OGs, I always go true to size, and they're a little bit roomy, but not too much to where I'd ever want to necessarily half size down on those. I've got two pairs of the other 85 releases. I've got the Varsity Reds. Those I actually went true to size, and initially I thought they were too small. Those were super, super tight, but I've worn them and now they've kind of like molded to my foot and now they fit perfect. So on these, I went true to size thinking they were gonna fit just like the other 85s, but the length on these is quite a bit different. This shoe is even roomier than my High OGs, and I'm a little bit worried that as these break in, they're gonna be to the point where they're a little bit bigger than I'd want them to be. So all that to say, if you're somebody who typically true to size fits a little bit roomy for you, I might actually half size down on these because I'm expecting these to break in and this leather to get much more soft, just like the other pairs of 85s. And I think half size down on these might have fit me better. But if you're somebody who the High OGs, those typically fit you pretty snug true to size, then I think you could stick true to size on these and you'll be okay. When it comes to comfort on these, I haven't worn them for any considerable amount of time yet, so it's hard to say exactly how comfortable they're gonna be, but I anticipate that they're gonna feel very similar to the 85s that I have from before. Those are not as comfortable to me as the High OGs are. I think that the rubber in the sole is a little bit more stiff, and since they're board lasted, they have even more rigidity to that sole. And so I think that that makes it a little bit more of a stiff shoe. So not uncomfortable, but definitely less comfortable than High OGs in my opinion. So I think it goes without saying, these are obviously a 10 out of 10. No questions asked, no arguments. These are one of the greatest shoes of all time. My favorite Air Jordan 1 of all time. I can't believe I finally have them. I'm so stoked to have these in the collection and in an 85 version as well. I couldn't be happier. And once those 85 Royals come out later on this year or early next year, I will have collected all of my favorite Air Jordan 1 original colorways. So I'm just one step closer with these. But I want to know what you guys think. So down in the comments below, let me know, are you a fan of this version of the Air Jordan 1 High 85 Bred, or are you a bigger fan of maybe the 2016 pair, or maybe that 2011 pair with the X on the back? I definitely still need those. And make sure you guys stay subscribed and hit that notification bell for when I post some new reviews. Like I said, I do have Flu Game 12s coming. I've also got Joe Freshgoods 992s coming, so I've got some more content coming your way. But in the meantime, make sure to wear your damn kicks, and I'll see you in the next review. Later.